It's Andy from Alien Space Education. I'm here today to talk about the fascinating wonders of Saturn, an amazing sixth planet from the Sun, very light and very fluffy, and I'll cover that why. Also rings and several moons that we're going to look at. Tune in for the next episode to discuss the moons, but I'm going to go through the basics of Saturn today. So let's have a look at what's on all about Saturn. So let's start with the basics. Saturn is about 1.5 billion kilometers away from the Sun, about 9.5 times further than Earth, which means 9.5 AU, astronomical units. We covered this before. It takes Saturn about 30 years to complete one orbit around the Sun. So if you're a child, imagine if you were on Saturn, you'd still be. Despite its size, Saturn isn't as dense as you might think. As I mentioned earlier, it's light and fluffy. It's the least dense planet in our solar system. If you had a large bathtub large enough to put Saturn in, it'd float. Jupiter would sink because it's more dense. Saturn would float. This low density is because Saturn is primarily made of hydrogen and helium, some of the elements that make the Sun. So the Sun is incredibly thick, incredibly dense, but Jupiter has the same elements. However, for Saturn, even though it's got these elements, it's light and fluffy. However, this makes the surface, or in the clouds, its atmosphere is a swirling mass of clouds. So very, very swirling mass, lots of clouds. Its upper layers are composed of ammonia ice, not very nice at all, which gives the planet a yellow hue. So remember we compared it earlier to the Sun. When you look at the Sun, some of the pictures, they're yellow. Or if you look at Saturn through a telescope, you'll see that it looks yellow because it's made of the same materials that the Sun is. However, the winds on Saturn are completely different to here on Earth and the Sun. It has winds that reach 1,800 kilometers per hour. They're even faster than a hurricane. They're one of the most powerful things on Earth. They're more powerful than hurricanes on Earth. The strong winds a hurricane give off, Saturn outclasses it 10 times. It's so much windier. Speaking of the weather, Saturn's atmosphere is a dynamic and turbulent. It's very uneven. Its famous feature is a great white spot, a massive storm that appears roughly every 30 years and is so large that it can be seen from Earth through a telescope and can wrap the entire planet. Wow, that's a big storm to cover the whole planet, and it turns the whole planet white. Ooh, that's not going to be very nice, and that's going to be extremely uncomfortable. So we have to watch that. But if you see Saturn, and you see it yellow and then it turns white, you know there's a storm there. Now, what's beneath these clouds? As you get deeper, just like you do on Jupiter, it gets denser and hotter, and eventually transitions into a liquid state due to the pressure. Further down, we think Saturn might have a core made of rock and metal, and we think it's a metallic hydrogen. Now, the reason we think that is because Saturn creates a magnetic field. Now, you may think, if we can't see what's in there, we think it's metallic hydrogen, so it creates a magnetic field. How do we know it has a magnetic field? Well, just like Earth, it creates auras, both on the North and South Pole. And that's how we know. If there weren't auras, there wouldn't be a magnetic field, and Saturn has one. So we know there's a metallic core, and we think it's hydrogen. We're not 100% sure, but we think it's hydrogen. It's only because we study it and we understand these things, we learn what these metallic features could be. Plus, with what we know about the atmosphere, we can tell what colour they're going to be as well. So they're incredibly beautiful and incredibly great. Now, the main thing that makes Saturn stand out to everything else is its rings. It has great, big, amazing rings. So big, they extend out 282,000 kilometers from the planet. and it's only and it's very, very thin, only 10 meters thick in some places. It has ice, dust, and rock particles. Each of them are different. Depending on where the rings are, depends on what's inside them. So the structure of these rings obviously changes as well. So we need to really look at, hang on, what sort of rock dust is this? What sort of ice is it? What sort of dust is it? We're talking about grains of sand here. We're looking through a telescope. How are you going to identify one particular grain of sand that's that's 9.5 billion kilometers away? That's a hard job. So the ring structure is divided into several main groups, named alphabetically in order they were discovered. So you've got to think these were discovered separately over the years. So the first one discovered was, but they don't go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, as they do in the alphabet. E and F, and then G we found out was in the middle of E and F. So it depends on when we discover it, and there could be more to discover later on that we can't see yet because we don't have technology, but that's what we think we've got in a minute. Now, between the bands B and A, there's about a 5,000 kilometer gap between them, that there's no rock and dust. Interesting, these rings are not static. They're dynamic and constantly changing. Particles collide and clumping together. And these rings are also influenced by the gravity of Saturn's moons, creating patterns and waves within the rings. So think of an ocean. They're constantly changing up and down. And the interaction between these rings and moon are a key to studying, key that we need to keep studying for the structure. So I'll cover the moons in the next episode. The culture and impact of Saturn. Beyond its scientific significance, Saturn has also been a profound impact on culture, mythology. The Roman god Saturn was a god of agriculture and time, symbolizing both wealth and plenty, as well as decay and death. Everything has a cycle. Saturn has a cycle. The planets associated with time is fitting, considering its long orbit and its slow state of movement. So it's always moving, but the rings are very static, even though they go up and down like the sea, like waves. It's always changing. The rings do orbit, but very, very slowly. In modern times, so today, Saturn continues to inspire, appearing in everything from science fiction, literature. Saturn is crucial to our study, and it's the only one we can see that you can see if you have a normal telescope. If you get it right, you look up the data, I'll happily show you how to look them up if you want me to. Please put it in the comments or use my website to message me. You can look up how to look at Saturn and see the beauty yourself. To look at the other outer planets, you would need a more powerful telescope. Thank you for joining me for today's mini episode. Please subscribe. You'll get a more in-depth episode to Saturn and some of the moons, and you'll learn a little bit more. I'll keep going. There's a lot more episodes to come. I hope you enjoy. I look forward to you listening to my next episode. The next episode will be, of course, Saturn's moons. Take care.